The Galactic Council Chamber was one of the most important places in the known universe. It was a hall made of light and steel, stretching wider than any stadium built on Earth. Rows of alien leaders filled the seats, their voices rising and falling like waves of thunder. Some spoke in deep growls, others in sharp clicking tones, and some used glowing symbols in the air that turned into words. The chamber was alive with tension. 1,000 different species had gathered to discuss one subject, and that subject was humanity. Humans had always been strange to the galaxy. Too bold, too reckless, too curious. They broke rules, ignored warnings, and walked into danger with a smile. The galaxy had watched them for centuries, unsure if they were heroes or monsters in disguise. Today, the Council had called for answers. Were humans a threat to peace? Should they be restrained, or even exiled forever? The room buzzed with fear, because even the strongest empires did not know what to do with them. In the center of the chamber, surrounded by guards of polished chrome, stood a single human. He was not dressed in armor, not wearing a uniform of war, but a simple shirt with bright flowers printed across it. In his hand, he held a drink with a slice of lime resting on the glass. He looked calm, almost too calm, as though he was sitting at a beach rather than standing in front of the most powerful rulers of the galaxy. The aliens watched him carefully. Some leaned forward with suspicion, others whispered to their neighbors. Why did he look so relaxed? Did he not understand the danger of his position? One wrong word could make the Council declare war against his species. Yet the man simply took a sip of his drink and gave a small smile. A voice boomed from the Council leader, a towering creature made of crystal and energy. Its body shimmered like a living diamond. Human, it said, each word echoing across the hall. You stand accused of being reckless, unpredictable, and dangerous to the galaxy's peace. Entire fleets fear your kind. Whole worlds tremble when your explorers arrive. Tell us, why should humanity not be contained? The human looked around the chamber. Thousands of eyes, some glowing, some mechanical, some with too many pupils, stared at him. He set his drink down on a small rail beside him. Then, in a quiet, casual voice, he spoke the words that would shake the galaxy forever. Hold my beer. The chamber went silent. Utterly silent. For a moment, it was as though the entire universe had forgotten how to breathe. The alien leaders froze. The robots guarding the hall stiffened, their sensors flashing red. A low hiss spread through the chamber as many species reacted with pure shock. Some gasped, their skin changing colors in fear. Others scrambled backward, knocking over chairs as they tried to get away. A few guards actually raised their weapons, ready to fire. All of this from two simple words. Hold my beer. The man's voice was casual, almost joking, yet every alien in the chamber reacted as if he had just declared war. No one explained why, but the fear was real, burning through the crowd like fire. The council leader's glowing body dimmed slightly. Its voice cracked with unease. You dare say that here? The human smiled again. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't threatening anyone. He wasn't holding a weapon. He had only spoken a phrase known by every species who had ever encountered humans before. And that phrase had a meaning darker than any superweapon. Because the galaxy had learned, through painful experience, what happened after humans said those words. An alien delegate, small and insect-like, buzzed in panic. He has said it. The phrase. The old warning. It scrambled out of its seat and ran toward the exit, its wings shaking. Another alien, tall and covered in scales, turned to its neighbor. We must leave. Now. Something insane is about to happen. Panic spread like lightning. The chamber that had once been filled with order and authority now broke into chaos. Voices shouted in fear. Guards pushed forward, forming lines of defense, not against the human but against whatever was coming next. And the human. He simply adjusted his shirt, stretched his shoulders, and looked amused. Relax, he said softly, though his words carried through the chamber. I'm not here to start trouble. But his calmness only made it worse. Because everyone in the room knew what came next. History had recorded it many times. Every time a human uttered those three words, hold my beer, something impossible followed. Something no other species would even dare attempt. It could be madness, it could be genius, but it always changed the battlefield, the mission, or even the fate of worlds. The council leader tried to regain control. Its body glowed brighter as it raised its crystalline arms. Remain calm. He is only one man. He cannot. The words were cut off by an alarm. A deep, echoing siren filled the chamber. Red lights flashed along the walls. Emergency symbols blinked across the air. The council's defense systems had activated on their own. Automatic threat level, maximum. The galaxy's most advanced computers had heard the phrase. And without waiting for orders, they raised the threat level as high as it could go. Ships outside the chamber armed their weapons. Shields snapped into place. Fleets moved into formation. The council leader turned back toward the human, glowing with rage and fear. What have you done? The human just gave a half smile, his voice calm, almost teasing. Nothing. Yet. The word yet echoed in the minds of every alien present. They understood. The phrase was not about what had already happened, it was about what was about to happen. The silence grew heavy again. Every alien heart beat faster. Every mind replayed old stories they wished were only legends. Stories of humans doing the impossible, of winning battles they should have lost, of turning hopeless odds into insane victories. Always, before they acted, those words were spoken. Hold my beer. The insect-like delegate was shaking uncontrollably now. Stop him. Do not let him begin. But how could they? He was unarmed. He had not threatened anyone. And yet, everyone in that chamber felt like they were standing on the edge of disaster. The human picked up his drink again, swirling it lightly. His tone stayed casual, but his eyes gleamed with something sharp, something dangerous. Funny thing about us, he said softly, we don't really like being told what we can't do. Every alien shuddered. Because they knew, deep inside, that this was not just a man standing before them. This was humanity itself, reckless, fearless, and unpredictable, wrapped in one person. And he had just spoken the words that no alien ever wanted to hear. The council chamber, once filled with confidence, now trembled with fear. The human lifted his glass slightly, as though toasting the galaxy itself, then whispered again. Hold my beer. The alarms kept echoing through the council chamber, each pulse of sound shaking the air like the beating of a war drum. Red lights washed over the walls, flashing again and again, while the thousands of alien delegates sat frozen, staring at the lone human in the center. No one spoke. No one moved. The silence was worse than shouting. It was the silence of fear, a silence that carried heavy memory. Because this was not the first time. Across the galaxy, there were old records, half-erased reports, stories whispered by veterans and survivors. Every culture had a version of it. Every story started the same way, with a human standing somewhere they should not have survived. Always calm, always reckless. And before they did the impossible, they said those same 3 words. Hold my beer. The delegates remembered. One insectoid diplomat recalled how a single human ship had once faced an entire pirate armada. The captain had said the phrase before steering his vessel into the middle of the enemy line. Everyone thought it was suicide. But somehow, the human had turned the battle into chaos, tearing the pirates apart and winning the impossible fight. Another delegate, scaled and scarred from war, remembered the time a human soldier had shouted the words before charging across a battlefield where no one else dared move. Against all reason, that soldier had broken the enemy line alone, and the entire army had followed. Victory had seemed impossible, yet somehow it was won. Even machines remembered. The Council's own archives showed that whenever those words were spoken, survival rates around humans dropped. Collateral damage rose. Outcomes became unpredictable. To the computers, "Hold my beer" was not just a phrase. It was a warning code for chaos. And now it had been spoken again. The Council leader's crystal body pulsed brighter, as if trying to hide its own unease. "Human," it said, its voice sharp, "you do not understand the weight of what you have said. This chamber will not allow disorder. Whatever you intend, it must end now." The human only chuckled, lifting his glass again, sipping as though this was all a game. His relaxed posture made every alien nervous, because the more calm he was, the worse the outcome always seemed to be. A smaller alien, covered in glowing feathers, leaned toward its neighbor and whispered, "Do you see how he behaves? He does not fear this court. He is waiting. He is planning. The neighbor shook its head. No. He does not plan. That is the danger. He will act without plan, and still succeed. The words carried, bouncing across the chamber until others heard. Whispers grew into low voices. Soon the entire council was buzzing like a storm. The fear was contagious, and it was spreading fast. Meanwhile, the human leaned against the railing and glanced at the massive holographic displays circling the chamber. Fleets were shown in orbit, defense grids locked in place, star systems glowing in bright colors of red and yellow as threat levels rose across every channel. The galaxy was already preparing for disaster, and yet no disaster had started. Not yet. Funny thing about panic, the man said, his voice carrying strangely well across the room. You all do it before anything even happens. But us. We wait until after. The simplicity of his words struck harder than a weapon. Because it was true. Humans were reckless, but they were not fools. They never waited for permission, never bowed to impossible odds. They acted when everyone else froze. And that was why the phrase was feared. It meant the impossible was about to be attempted, whether it made sense or not. The alarms kept screaming. Guards rushed to the edges of the chamber. Some pointed weapons at the human, but their hands shook. To fire on him meant triggering something worse. To not fire meant waiting for the storm to fall. One delegate finally broke. A plant-like being with a body of twisting vines rose from its seat, voice cracking with desperation. We must shut him down. If he speaks again, if he acts, the chamber will be lost. But no one moved. Because deep inside, every alien leader knew a terrible truth: humans were not controlled by force. Guns did not stop them. Threats did not frighten them. Even death itself did not silence them. They thrived where others failed, and they laughed where others cried. The human's smile widened as he set his glass down again. Slowly, almost lazily, he rolled his shoulders and stepped forward. His shoes echoed softly on the polished floor, each step louder than the alarms. He looked around the chamber, making eye contact with every species brave enough to stare back. Then he said, "You're all scared of what comes next. And you should be." The words were not shouted. They were calm, almost casual. But they struck every heart like thunder. And in that moment, the galaxy knew something was about to happen. Something insane. Something no one else would dare attempt. And the man had already said the words. The chamber's tension did not fade. If anything, it grew heavier with each passing second. The alarms continued to wail, a steady reminder that the galaxy's most advanced systems had already accepted the truth. The threat level was now at its peak, and it was all because of one man and 3 casual words. But still, nothing had happened. Not yet. Delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some had fled already, unwilling to remain in the presence of a human who had spoken the phrase. Others stayed, frozen between curiosity and terror. To leave would admit fear, but to stay meant waiting for chaos to unfold. The human finished the last sip of his drink, setting the empty glass gently on the railing. His movements were slow, deliberate, and strangely calm. He looked around at the thousands of eyes watching him, then shrugged. "You all worry too much. Let me show you something." The words struck like lightning. Show them something. Every alien tensed. The guards aimed their weapons now, fingers trembling on the triggers. The council leader raised a hand of light, its voice sharp and commanding. Do not move. This chamber is not a place for human games. The human ignored the warning. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. At first glance it looked harmless, just a lump of metal and wires, something an engineer might tinker with. But the moment it touched open air, alien sensors screamed. Defense grids activated. Energy fields hummed. The entire room shook as the council's automated protections identified the object as a possible weapon. The insectoid delegate screeched in panic. He has brought it. The human device. Another voice shouted, "Contain him. Contain him now." But no one dared fire. Because if they shot too early, they risked setting off whatever the human held in his hand. He looked at the device casually, turning it over as if it were a toy. "Relax," he said softly, his voice calm in the chaos. It's just an experiment. Nothing dangerous, unless I make it so. That last phrase was worse than any direct threat. The council leader's body flickered as if its light was dimming. Explain. What is that? The human smiled faintly. It's nothing. A test. A first step. But you know us, we like to test things in the field. No simulations. No endless debate. We just try, and if it works, it works. Every alien in the chamber understood the meaning. Humans did not fear failure. They did not wait for perfect conditions. They acted. That was why they were dangerous. The device pulsed with a faint glow, a soft blue light that spread across the human's hand. The chamber filled with nervous whispers. Some recognized the energy signature. It was unstable, unpredictable, raw. It was the kind of thing that could power a ship or burn a city, depending on how it was used. The human tilted his head, studying the glow as though testing its color. Then he glanced back at the crowd and said, "Funny thing is, you've been watching us for centuries. You still don't understand. You think rules keep us safe. But us. We only grow when we break them." The glow brightened. Gasps filled the chamber. Guards took a step back. The plant-like delegate's vines twitched in fear. The scaled warrior gritted his teeth, whispering, "He will do it. He will actually do it." But the human only slipped the device back into his pocket. The glow vanished, leaving silence. The relief was immediate but shallow, because everyone knew he hadn't ended the threat, he had only delayed it. "You see," the man said with a smile. "Not every experiment explodes. But you never know, do you? That's the point." The council leader's crystal body shone with anger and fear. "This is madness. You bring chaos to our chamber, you mock our order, and you endanger the entire galaxy with your recklessness. Do you not understand what is at stake?" The human's answer was quiet, almost gentle. "I understand better than you. That's why I said it." No one needed to ask what he meant. Everyone knew. Hold my beer. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a meaningless phrase. It was a signal, a promise, that something insane was about to begin. And though he had only shown a glimpse of it with the device, everyone in the room felt the weight of what was coming. The alarms shifted, changing tone. On the holographic displays above, the defense systems zoomed out to show the wider star system. Dozens of fleets were already mobilizing. Warships armed themselves, shields powered up, and entire planets were preparing for disaster. The phrase had triggered more than panic, it had triggered protocol. The galaxy was ready for war. And all because one man had decided to test something in the middle of the council's heart. The human leaned back against the railing, his expression still calm, almost amused, as though this chaos was exactly what he had expected. Perhaps it was. Perhaps this was the point all along. The delegates stared in silence, their minds racing, their fear growing. They did not yet know what the human would do next. But they all knew one truth, the same truth recorded across centuries of history. When a human said those words, something was going to change. Something impossible. And the impossible was about to begin. The chamber was still filled with unease. Even after the human tucked the glowing device away, no one relaxed. The alarms had slowed, but they did not stop. Threat level remained locked at maximum, a constant reminder that the galaxy itself no longer trusted what was happening. Whispers moved like shadows through the seats. Some delegates argued that the man should be executed immediately, before he could act further. Others disagreed, warning that any attempt to silence him might only trigger something worse. The fear was not of what he held in his hand, it was of what history had shown every time a human said those cursed words. An elderly alien with translucent skin leaned forward, voice trembling as it addressed the chamber. "You all forget, we have seen this before. Entire empires remember. It always begins the same way." Many turned to stare at it, waiting. The old being closed its eyes, as if recalling something painful. Long ago, during the siege of Orion, one human stood before 3 fleets. He was outnumbered 100 to 1. His own crew begged him to surrender. Instead, he laughed, handed his drink to his second officer, and said the phrase. Hours later, the enemy fleets were gone. No one knows how he did it. But the system still burns, even now. A shiver spread across the chamber. Even those who had doubted the legends could not deny the truth. Humans had a history of doing what should not be possible. Another delegate, this one a machine intelligence with a shifting body of metal shards, added its voice. Records from my kind are exact. During the War of the Trell Dominion, a human ground commander said the words before leading a charge through terrain we had calculated was impassable. The outcome should have been defeat. Probability of survival was less than 1%. Yet his forces broke through. They turned certain destruction into victory. Our models still cannot explain how. The murmurs grew louder, fear mixing with disbelief. The human in the center only shrugged. You see, we're consistent. When things look impossible, we don't walk away. We say the words, and then we try anyway. Sometimes we win. Sometimes we don't. But we always try. The council leader struck the floor with a crystalline hand, the sound ringing like breaking glass. This is not bravery. This is recklessness without end. You gamble with lives, with worlds, with the stability of all things. And you call it courage. The man smiled faintly. No. We call it living. The chamber fell into silence again. The words hit harder than any weapon, because they revealed a truth no alien could ever understand. To humans, danger was not something to avoid. It was something to face, something that proved their worth. The plant-bodied delegate trembled, vines twisting in fear. They are not bound by logic. They are not chained by fear. That is why they are dangerous. They do not know how to stop. The human raised a finger as if correcting it. Not true. We stop when the job's done. The casual tone only deepened the unease. The galaxy could calculate threats, predict strategies, model probabilities, but there was no formula for a human who had decided to do the impossible. The council leader's light dimmed as it spoke again. Then answer me this, human. Why here? Why now? Why speak the words in the heart of the council itself? The man looked around at the thousands of faces, then leaned forward slightly, his voice soft but cutting through the air. Because you still don't believe us. You watch from your thrones, calling us reckless, but you don't understand. You think it's a flaw. It's not. It's our strength. And I wanted you to see it up close. The council erupted into noise. Some shouted in anger. Others pleaded for restraint. Guards raised weapons, but none dared fire. The human's calm eyes scanned the chaos, and for the first time, a shadow of seriousness crossed his face. You all fear the words, he said, his voice steady. But you don't understand them. When we say it, it means we're about to step beyond reason. It means the limits are gone. It means we'll do the thing no one else will. And once it's done, nothing is the same. His words fell heavy in the air. Every alien present understood now why the phrase was feared. It was not a warning. It was a declaration that reality itself was about to be rewritten. The alarms pulsed again, louder than before. Outside the chamber, fleets repositioned. Systems locked into defense mode. Entire worlds watched the council feed, their people holding their breath. And in the center of it all stood one man, hands free, smiling faintly, as if he held the universe in his pocket. He had said the words. And the galaxy knew the storm had only just begun. The tension inside the chamber had reached its breaking point. The alarms continued to howl, the defense grids glowed hotter, and entire fleets outside waited for an order to strike. Every delegate sat frozen, unsure whether to flee or to stay and witness whatever was about to unfold. The human stood calm in the center, as though none of it mattered. Then a new voice broke through the noise. From the far end of the chamber, the massive doors slid open. The guards stepped aside, not out of respect, but out of fear. A towering figure entered, its heavy footsteps echoing across the polished floor. The being was a warlord from the core Dominion, one of the most feared warrior species in the galaxy. Its body was covered in black-scaled armor, its eyes glowing with golden fire. It carried no weapon, yet its presence alone was enough to silence even the alarms for a moment. The council leader's glow dimmed uneasily. Warlord, this chamber is not yours to command. The alien ignored the warning. Its voice boomed like thunder as it addressed the human. So this is the famous phrase. This is the madness every world whispers of. I see nothing but words. Empty words. The human raised his eyebrows slightly. He didn't move. He didn't flinch. He only smiled, as though amused by the challenge. The warlord stepped closer, scales glinting in the red warning lights. Your kind claims these words mean change. You say them before the impossible. I do not believe in your legends. I believe only in strength. The warlord's claws flexed against the floor, leaving deep marks in the metal. Show me, human. Say it again. Prove it to me. Or admit that your species is nothing but fools who gamble with death. A ripple of unease spread through the chamber. No one had ever dared to provoke a human after the phrase had been spoken. The delegates held their breath, waiting to see if the man would rise to the bait. The human tilted his head, as if weighing the words. His calm eyes met the warlord's burning gaze. Then, without any trace of hesitation, he placed his empty glass on the floor, straightened his shirt, and said softly, "Hold my beer." The warlord bared its fangs in a grin. Good. Now let us see what follows. The room erupted in panic. Delegates cried out, some fleeing toward the exits. The alarm screamed louder than before, reacting to the phrase as though it were a weapon. Fleets outside the chamber moved instantly, ships snapping into formation, weapons arming, defense protocols escalating. The galaxy itself was responding, as if it too understood what those words meant. But the human did not reach for a gun. He did not build his strange device again. Instead, he simply walked forward to meet the warlord, his steps steady and slow. His hands were empty, his voice calm. You want proof. Proof is what happens when we stop caring about odds. Proof is when fear no longer matters. Proof is what you're about to see. The warlord's golden eyes narrowed, studying him. You think you can face me unarmed? You think words will protect you? The man gave a faint laugh. Not words. Actions. That's the part you keep forgetting. The warlord roared, a sound that shook the entire chamber, and swung a clawed arm at the human. The strike could have split steel, could have shattered bone. Delegates screamed, shields flickered, guards raised their weapons. But the man didn't dodge. He stepped into the strike, twisting his body in a motion so fast and precise that the warlord's blow crashed against empty air. In one fluid motion, the human's hand pressed against the warlord's chest, right where the armor was weakest. A small click echoed. The warlord froze. Delegates gasped, their eyes wide. Because they saw it, in the human's hand was the small device he had shown before. No one had seen him retrieve it. No one had seen him arm it. But now it was pressed directly against the warlord's chest, glowing with that dangerous blue light. The man's voice was low, steady, and cold. You wanted proof. Here it is. I could detonate this, bring this whole chamber down, maybe even take half the fleet with me. That's one option. The other option, his smile returned, calm and sharp, is that I don't. The warlord's grin faltered. The golden fire in its eyes flickered. For the first time, hesitation showed on its face. The chamber went silent again. Thousands of alien leaders leaned forward, barely daring to breathe. The phrase had been spoken, the challenge made, and now the galaxy waited for the result. The human slowly pulled the device back, tucking it into his pocket once more. He stepped away, giving the warlord space, his voice calm as ever. That's the lesson. We don't bluff. We don't pretend. When we say the words, we mean it. We'll do the impossible, no matter the cost. The warlord stood frozen, its claws shaking slightly, the mark of fear visible even through its armor. And the delegates finally understood why the phrase terrified the galaxy. Because it was never just words. It was the moment before chaos, the heartbeat before change, the spark before the fire. And the fire had only just been lit. The chamber's silence did not last long. It never did when humans were involved. The warlord stepped back slowly, his golden eyes still fixed on the man who had so easily slipped past his guard. The delegates whispered in shock, some amazed that the human had survived, others terrified of what might come next. The glowing device was back in his pocket, but everyone knew that was not the end of it. Humans never ended with a warning. The phrase had been spoken, and something far worse was always waiting. Above them, the holographic displays flickered, shifting from red alerts to something stranger. A new signal appeared, faint at first, then growing brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat across the system map. Entire fleets outside the chamber were already repositioning, sensors trying to trace the source of the signal. Defense AI systems whirred, confused, their calculations climbing into infinity. The human's calm voice broke the uneasy silence. You've built a council chamber filled with walls and shields and weapons. You think this place is safe. But you've forgotten one thing, safety is an illusion. Delegates tensed. The insectoid diplomat screeched in panic, its wings buzzing. He has triggered something. The old machines. I told you. I told you. The council leader glowed fiercely, its voice hard. What did you do, human? The man slipped his hands into his pockets, his shoulders relaxed as though he were taking a stroll along a beach. I didn't do anything. Not yet. But your own systems just woke something up. You see that signal? That's not mine. That's yours. Something your ancestors buried a long time ago. The hologram zoomed outward, revealing a location deep in the system's outer belt, where dead asteroids floated in silence. From within the darkness came a shape, a massive, ancient construct, hidden for millennia. It was larger than a moon, covered in dormant machinery, its surface scarred with forgotten battles. And now it was glowing, faintly but steadily, as if stirred from slumber. Gasps filled the chamber. Delegates shouted in confusion, guards scrambled, and fleets outside panicked. The alarms shifted again, their tones becoming sharp and urgent. The human looked up at the hologram with a small nod, as though satisfied. There it is. Right where the record said it would be. The warlord snarled, his voice a mixture of rage and fear. You brought us here to awaken this thing. The man shrugged. I didn't bring you. You were already here. I just gave it a little nudge. The plant-bodied delegate's vines shivered violently. He's insane. He will doom us all. But the machine intelligence spoke in a voice colder than ice. No, this explains it. Our archives mention a human expedition 2 centuries ago. They reported finding a weapon in this system. A relic older than any empire. The record ended with those 3 words. We thought it was myth. The human's smile widened, his voice quiet but carrying across the chamber. Not myth. Just history repeating itself. The construct on the hologram pulsed brighter. Massive structures shifted along its hull, as if awakening after endless sleep. Energy readings climbed higher and higher, reaching levels that even the Council's most advanced systems could barely measure. Panic surged through the chamber. Some delegates ran, fleeing toward the exits. Others shouted at the Council leader to order immediate evacuation. Fleets outside repositioned desperately, their formations breaking as captains argued whether to flee or fight. The human stood perfectly still, hands still in his pockets, watching the chaos with calm eyes. You all wanted to know what comes after the words. Well, this is it. We don't back down. We don't stop. When the odds are impossible, when logic says walk away, that's when we act. And the universe changes. The warlord's voice shook with fury. You've doomed us all. The man finally looked at him, a faint spark of fire in his eyes. No. I've given you a choice. That's the part you never understand. We never do the impossible just for ourselves. We do it because someone has to. Because standing still means nothing ever changes. The construct's glow flared, brighter than a star, and a low hum filled the chamber as if the ancient machine itself had begun to breathe again. The holograms shook, unable to process the energy readings. The alarm screamed one final warning, system breach, unstoppable force detected. And the human whispered again, so softly that only those closest to him could hear. Hold my beer. The hum from the ancient construct grew until it rattled the bones of every being in the chamber. The holograms flickered violently, unable to render the full scope of the thing that was now alive in the dark. Outside, fleets scattered, their commanders shouting orders no one could follow. Ships broke formation, some fleeing toward hyperspace, others preparing for a last stand. And in the middle of all this chaos, the human stood perfectly calm. The construct shifted. Enormous panels unfolded like wings, each one larger than a city. A beam of light cut across the void, sweeping the system as though the ancient machine was scanning, searching, remembering. Energy readings spiked again, climbing past anything the council had ever measured. The alarms in the chamber screamed until they burned out, one by one, leaving only silence and the deep thrumming sound of power beyond comprehension. The warlord's voice was barely a growl. "You've killed us all." The human tilted his head, almost amused. "No. Not all. Just enough to make sure the rest survive." Before anyone could ask what he meant, the construct moved. A colossal lance of light erupted from its core, firing across the system. It struck an uninhabited gas giant, and in a single instant the planet was gone, shattered, vaporized, turned into glowing dust. The shockwave rippled outward, slamming into fleets, scattering them like leaves in a storm. Delegates screamed. The chamber trembled. Even the warlord staggered back. But the human didn't move. His voice was steady. That was the warning shot. The council leader's glow dimmed with horror. "Warning. That thing can unmake entire worlds. What are you doing?" The man's eyes locked on the hologram. His calmness was gone now, replaced with something sharper, something like fire. 2 centuries ago, you buried this machine because you were afraid of it. You wanted to hide it, to forget it existed. But you didn't destroy it, because deep down you knew one day you'd need it. You just hoped it wouldn't be us who found it. The construct shifted again, its colossal frame now turning toward the fleets clustered near the council's own defense lines. Weapons locked on, their signatures brighter than a sun about to go nova. Delegates begged, shouted, cried. The chamber was nothing but chaos. And still the human spoke, quiet but unshakable. "You wanted to know why the phrase scares you. It's because you know what comes after. We don't stop. We don't hesitate. We don't wait for permission. When it's impossible, we do it anyway. And when I said those words, this construct stopped being your secret. Now it's ours." The warlord roared and leapt forward, claws raised, but the man didn't even flinch. In an instant, the warlord froze as the ancient machine shifted again, and every fleet weapon, every defense system, every targeting array in the chamber's orbit locked onto him instead of the human. The message was clear. The machine wasn't answering to the council anymore. It was answering to him. The human's smile returned, calm and terrifying all at once. "You see, it's not about strength. It's about resolve. And humans, we don't break." Outside, the construct's weapons pulsed once more. A second beam fired, not at a planet this time, but at the approaching war fleets massed at the edge of the system. In a flash, hundreds of ships vanished, consumed in silence, their wreckage scattered like dust. The delegates were beyond panic now. Some fainted. Others clutched at their translators, begging for evacuation. The council leader could only stare, its glow flickering weakly. The human turned toward them at last, his voice softer now, almost gentle. "The galaxy raised its threat level to maximum when we said those words. And it was right to. Because when humans say, 'Hold my beer,' he glanced up at the construct, its colossal frame now looming over every fleet. Everything changes." The machine hummed again, louder this time, its light filling the chamber like a second sun. And for the first time in recorded history, the Galactic Council bowed their heads, not in command, not in ceremony, but in fear. The construct's glow burned brighter, its colossal body stretching across the system like a second dawn. The fleets that had not yet fled hung paralyzed in the void, their captains whispering silent prayers to gods who would not answer. Every targeting system, every sensor, every trembling eye in the chamber knew one truth: whatever happened next would reshape the galaxy forever. The human stood unmoving, as though the chaos belonged to someone else. His calmness was unnatural, terrifying even. He looked up at the hologram of the construct as though he were watching an old friend stir from slumber. The council leader's glow flickered in desperation. "Human, you don't understand. That thing was not built to defend. It was built to erase. It was sealed because it listens only to those who dare command it. You think you control it, but soon it will demand more. It will demand sacrifice." The man's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. "Sacrifice is nothing new to us." The construct shifted, its vast panels groaning like the bones of a dying star. Then the system's deep space sensors screamed with new alerts. Something else was moving, something hidden far beyond the edges of known space. Shadows emerged, vast and terrible. A fleet unlike any the Council had ever faced, black ships older than empires, rising from the dark. Gasps filled the chamber. The machine intelligence delegate froze, its processors stuttering. Impossible. Those are precursor vessels. They should not exist. The human's eyes hardened. Oh, they exist. They always have. Your council just never had the guts to look past the dark. The construct turned, as if answering him. Its colossal weapons adjusted, locking onto the approaching armada. A low hum rolled through the chamber, rattling bones and hearts alike. The warlord snarled, his voice shaking. You're calling death upon us all. The man shook his head. No. I'm calling their bluff. The first wave of precursor ships fired. Energy beams the size of continents lanced across space, tearing through council fleets as though they were paper. Ships exploded in silent flashes, entire armadas shredded in moments. The chamber trembled with the distant echoes of the slaughter. But the human did not flinch. His voice was steady, almost quiet. Now. Show them. The construct unleashed its fury. A storm of light erupted, beams brighter than suns cutting through the void. Precursor ships vanished by the dozens, their black hulls torn apart, their ancient weapons silenced. The construct's wrath swept across the system, every strike precise, every blow devastating. What had been a nightmare invasion became a massacre in reverse. The delegates wept, some in terror, others in awe. For the first time, they understood, this was not defense. This was dominance. The human finally turned back to the chamber, his eyes cold, his words sharper than any blade. This is why you fear us. Because when you raise your threat levels, when you whisper warnings, when you pray we never say those words, deep down, you know what comes after. You know we'll fight. You know we'll win. And you know the galaxy will never be the same again. Outside, the last of the precursor fleet disintegrated under the construct's fire. Silence followed, vast and absolute. The warlord dropped to one knee, his golden eyes dim with defeat. The insectoid diplomat folded its wings in surrender. The council leader's glow flickered weakly as it spoke the words none had ever imagined. We submit. Humanity commands the stars. The human bent down, picked up his empty glass from the polished floor, and brushed the dust from it. His smile was faint, tired, yet unbroken. Good, he said softly. Now someone get me another drink. And in the silence that followed, the galaxy itself seemed to bow.